Sun TV. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my film review of Malcolm X. Now, this is a film which is very close to my heart. It's probably my favorite film. And how I came about this film was I was actually at university and I was just looking for some films which promoted Islam in a positive light. Because obviously there's an agenda going on with anti-Islam content in movies. So that brought me to a list of some films, and actually some of those films I'll be reviewing elsewhere in my channel. And this one is Malcolm X. So I heard about the film and I bought the VHS and just to test the waters, I watched the whole film on my VHS player. That shows you how long of a time ago it was, and I liked that. And as I moved on to a DVD player myself, I then bought a DVD, and that was a single disc. And again, I like, I like the sort of quality of the film and the message of the film. And then I bought, sorry, a two-disc DVD special. And at that time, it was an American import, and it played on my UK Region B player. And it had some deleted scenes, which was interesting. And then after that, I upgraded to the Blu-ray, which I have now. And since then, now there is a 4K release of Malcolm X film, and basically that's even better. But as I don't have a 4K player, and I don't intend to in the near future, I'm gonna stick with my Blu-ray. Um, the film for me is very hard to sort of actually sort of digest and comprehend. You have to understand this was obviously based on Malcolm X, and the weight of his message and all of those things means that I only get to watch it maybe once or twice a year, and after that, it's a bit too hard for me to process. In fact, in just before I made this review, I did cry as well, so I'm a little bit emotional about this whole thing. Um, when the film was launched, it coincided with the Rodney King beatings, if you remember, in by the LAPD, and Spike Lee, the director, actually incorporated that in the intro of the film. I've seen many other films, so I've seen Selma, based on the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. I've seen Ghandi, I've seen Jinnah, and whilst they explain, the sort of biopics and life stories of those respected personalities, this film just has an attraction which makes me keep on coming back to it. Um, and Spike Lee, he fought very hard to sort of get this production done. As you guys know, the film was, it went over budget, and there wasn't enough money from the outset. But as Spike Lee said, to borrow a term from one of the directors, you sort of get the movie pregnant, in inverted commas, so that they have to follow through. And he had to, ask for a lot of black celebrities for help to complete the film. So he asked people like Michael Jordan and Janet Jackson, Magic Johnson. Denzel Washington, he played obviously the lead role in this film, and many years back he played in a play called Chicken. The Chickens Come Home to Roost, and he still had his glasses from that play. So actually, that's what he used again in this film. The film didn't win any Oscars because, as you know, it's a very political environment, and most of the case, you find that individual films don't get the recognition that they deserve, and for an actor, they might get some Oscar way down the line as a sort of recompense for the Oscars, the Academy, their sort of omissions earlier on. So, um, as Spike Lee said, we were robbed. I can't put into words just how good the sort of acting was. In terms of Denzel's preparation, he told his agent that he would put on hold for a whole year prior to the start of filming for this film, and in that time, he tried to get into the sort of the physical and spiritual aspects of Brother Malcolm. So, as a Muslim, he started to read the Holy Quran by, first of all, understanding Arabic. He used to fast, which means no food and water from from dawn to sunset. He also didn't drink any alcohol, didn't eat any pork, and all of these things he tried to sort of help him really get in Zen and get into the zone. When you see the film, you see the transformation of Malcolm X happening right before your eyes. You see him as a child. You see him sort of, commit those robberies earlier on. You see him go into jail. You see him join the Nation of Islam. You then see him on his rise within that organization. You then see him see the contradictions of the Nation of Islam and its leader, Elijah Muhammad, and then you see him go to Mecca. And you see him go to Egypt, and then they didn't show the African tour, but then he goes to Saudi Arabia for the Hajj. He comes back as a changed person, and then the end Malcolm that you see is totally different to what you saw before, and you see this character change over time. Interestingly, the film is 3 1/3 hours, and it was quite a long film. And again, Spike Lee, the director, had to fight with the executives and the studio executives to sort of have it that long, because he felt that if JFK was as long as it was, then Malcolm X and the film certainly needed to as well. Filming was done in Egypt to mimic the scenes of Saudi Arabia. They did actually film the Kaaba, which is, in Saudi Arabia. They did actually get to film that. But when Denzel was actually being filmed, he was in Egypt. South Africa as well for the Nelson Mandela scenes. The phrase "wake up" is something that's used in all of Spike's films, along with things like the double dolly shot. And wake up, when the term wake up is used in one of Spike's films, the character has an emotional, spiritual, mental, transformation, and they do wake up, essentially. So when Betty Shabazz, Malcolm X's wife in the film, says, "Wake up, Malcolm," he then starts to do his own investigations, and that's when he starts to detract from the Nation of Islam. Denzel's actual son, John, he played one of the school kids at the end of the film, who sort of stand up and say, "I am Malcolm X," and also his son also played in Black Klansman, which again is another film which I'll be reviewing later on. And Denzel's actual mum, she was also in the film. And in real life, Malcolm's dad had his house burned, and Malcolm himself had his house burned on the 14th of July. And some of the improvements that I think could have been made to the film. I mean, as I say, it's my number one film, and there's very little you could actually change, if that makes sense. But one of the things that I would do is I would delete some of the sort of scenes which don't really add to the story, and and actually I like the deleted scenes. The deleted scenes, which obviously were deleted and weren't actually in the official running of the film, they could replace, and so the actual time, the length, wouldn't be increased. The second thing that I also think is that the first third of the film could be condensed to allow for more of the second and third parts of Brother Malcolm's life to be shown. So, for example, the first third, it contains a lot of, for me it looked like a kind of like a Broadway musical, especially with the 1930s kind of dancing, etc., etc. And whilst obviously that's important to sort of show the transformation, also I think that that could be condensed, as I say, that could be really condensed, because the real message of Brother Malcolm was in the latter second and third part of his life. Anyway, um, in that vein, you then have things like the visits in Africa, which weren't prominent, which weren't shown in the film explicitly, apart from being in Egypt, that is, because it's that African unity when he spoke to the African leaders, which he was then going to come back to the United States and then bring forward a case against the United Nations for the treatment of the Negro people, and to convert from a black problem to a human rights problem. So I think that would have given a lot of backstory. And also, when he was coming back from the, from the, sorry, to the UK, he visited the UK, which is where I live. And one of the streets he actually visited was Marshall Street in Birmingham, which, as you can probably see, so I have a documentary as well, which you can find on my channel. So, which was actually the place of the start of UK apartheid, black only streets and white only streets, but that never materialized. And Brother Malcolm actually walked down that street and gave a lot of media spotlight to that area. So again, that sort of element, even if it would be a 5-minute scene or a 2-minute scene or whatever, if that could have been put in the film, that would have, I think, just helped to sort of cement and show the viewers Malcolm's impact. And if you remember, that was just 9 days before he was assassinated. Some of the so obviously the book was actually based on the autobiography by Alex Haley, and it was Malcolm's view of his life from start to finish, and he knew that obviously he would be assassinated just because of the trajectory he was on. And you'll find that the system always eliminates people who stand against the system and speak the truth. So Brother Malcolm knew his inevitability, and there was actually, so I've actually read the autobiography, and there were some differences, but I do actually prefer this film over the actual autobiography, just because I think for me it just brings it really to life. And one of the funny things, one of the funny scenes that I remember in the autobiography was when Malcolm was pretending to be mad, so he could escape, official duty to the war, I think in Vietnam at that time. So I think that would have been very funny just to see him sort of, do that. I want to give you a Malcolm X quote, and it is, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. So these words, these are timeless and they are classic. They don't date, and the truth remains the truth forever. It's forever green. And you can apply these words in 1965 when he died, or you can apply them in 2023. They still ring true. Lastly, I want to talk about I've been to New York myself, and I went in the late 90s, and at that time I hadn't heard of Malcolm X, and I was just there as a tourist with my mum and my dad, and we went to, the Statue of Liberty, we went to all of the, various tourist places. But if I had a chance to go to New York again, I would certainly go to his grave and recite Al-Fatiha. So within the religion of Islam, Al-Fatiha is like a gift to the deceased and to the soul. They get a lot of blessing. So I hope you'll join me. In the name of Allah, the All-Beneficent, the All-Merciful. All praise belongs to Allah, Lord of all the worlds, the All-Beneficent, the All-Merciful, Master of the Day of Retribution. You alone do we worship, and to you alone do we turn for help. Guide us on the straight path, the path of those whom you have blessed, such as have not incurred your wrath nor are astray.